leid, ich muss das auf Englisch machen. Ich lebe und arbeite in London und über die Arbeit auf Deutsch zu sprechen fällt mir inzwischen sehr schwer. So I'm going to do this in English for you and you and you and you and you and for myself because otherwise it would be horrible. So, hi, my name is Julian. I work at, thank you, Curtis. I work at a company called Olio in London. We make hiring software, which is basically a SaaS product written in Catalyst and Perl and DBX class. And I've given lots of similar talks where I've been speaking about training and mentoring. And because I've been doing this particular thing in the last couple of weeks, I would like to continue this theme. And today we're going to talk about work experiences and internships, or in German that would be a Praktikum. So I'm going to try and talk a little bit about the German market, but I think it's going to be mostly the UK market because that's the one I know now. But I would be happy to have a discussion about your experiences. So before we start, I'm going to do the arm raising exercise as well. Who of you has trainees or apprentices, Auszubildende at work? That's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's a few, okay. It's like about a fifth of everyone. Some people are undecided. Maybe they've had some in the past. I've come up through basically a German apprenticeship and Ausbildung, and I've myself trained a lot of them. And today we're not going to talk about those, but we're going to talk about the bit that might come before. Getting people to try out to be a developer before they decide to go and learn and study to be a developer. So I'm going to talk about internships and work experiences and what the difference is between the two of them. I'm going to talk about pros and cons for you as a company, as an employer, for the person who's doing the internship as a student, and then for a person who might be sponsoring the internship, in as much as, say, your neighbor goes and says, oh, you know, you work in this software thing. My son really needs to do an internship. And we're going to explore whether you should be helping them or maybe not. And we'll see. So I'm going to start with what's an internship, what's a work experience. So again, in German, both of them are Praktikum, I suppose. But in English, an internship is usually up to several months. So this is something you would do while you are in university, and it might be something your university requires you to do. Maybe it's like a whole semester, maybe it's half a semester. It usually can be paid. It doesn't have to be paid, but it might be paid. And you might also get paid in academic credit, because if your university requires you to do this, for example, so that you can get your bachelor's degree or your PhD or whatever, then obviously there's credit involved. Often you apply to a large company and you apply either for a specific project or you suggest a specific project, such as I'm going to do some machine learning thing, I'm going to write my PhD thesis, and I can like use my research in order to figure these things out for you. That's very common. On the other hand, we have work experiences, which is typically 2 weeks. Sometimes it's 1 week in Germany in school. Like it's very common in Germany that there are 2 of these for like a 1 week or 2 week period, usually like in grade 9 or 10 and then 11, where you have to go find the company and you just have to go work, basically. And it doesn't matter so much what you're trying out. It's more about that you get work experience, and some people use this to see if that's the kind of job they want. Other people go and work in their dad's company and like do some tiling or building or baking or cooking. And then other people know a bunch of people or have parents who know people, and then they get into really exciting IT companies like IBM or the Deutsche Messe AG, like I did when I was little. So I ended up getting into Cebit for free because like 3 weeks before I did my internship in the IT support for Deutsche Messe AG, and that was great. And then for 2 years I just walked into Cebit through the back door. But not everyone is that lucky, obviously. So this is usually through school, or it could be self-motivated. Someone just decides, I really want to try this thing out. It's the summer holidays, I'm just going to try. Yeah, and there's usually not a lot of like planning goes into this. You don't have a big project. You just show up, you do work. So let's see how this works. So from a company perspective, has anyone actually had interns like this? Quick show of hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's a few less than the Auszubildende, but I think there were some other hands. So that's interesting. So I'm going to tell you why you should have interns. Potentially, so there's a potential for long-term hires, obviously, which cuts down costs. So hiring IT people is expensive. It takes long. My company makes hiring software, so I can tell you all about this, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to talk about this. So basically, if you get a lot of people applying for a role, and even if that's really like early careers role, picking the right one takes a long time. And that, of course, the longer time it takes, the more it costs. And then if you hire the wrong one, you've thrown all of that money out of the window. You have to invest more time, more money. So that's bad. So if you try someone out early on, you can say, this one was really good. Like next year, we're just going to go and hire them. And then we can just not do all of the hiring, which, you know, might seem unfair. We'll speak about that. It gives you access to fresh talent and therefore fresh thoughts. So my example for this is when I did my stuff in like year 9 at the Deutsche Messe AG, I was 14. I remember downloading Counter-Strike on their like 1 megabyte per second internet, and I was like, this is amazing. Yeah, so this is like Windows 95, Windows 98, something like that. But I think I was quite all right at using computers at the time. Like, they didn't hate me. And I remember them telling my teacher that if I was old enough, they'd just hire me. So, like, for some people, this works really well. You get people who know this stuff already, and they bring fresh ideas. And occasionally, having your company's work challenged by someone who is much younger and knows a lot more about the really, really new things, and maybe not so much about the actual professional things, but that doesn't matter, is really great, because it lets you think about, what am I doing? How are we doing this? How can we do it better? And that's great. And of course, another thing, and maybe this is like, you can look at this from like a really local perspective, but also from a larger perspective. It's really good for your reputation as an employer, because people do internships with you and then they go away and they say, this was really great. And I can recommend this, and it builds your brand and it makes you nicer as an employer in slightly a different way than, say, people leaving good Glassdoor reviews would. Glassdoor, the German one, is Kununu still a thing? I don't know. That used to be Xing, I think. So that's great as well. But of course, it costs money and there's effort. So it is quite expensive because you have to prepare work, you have to do contracts. So your HR department, maybe your legal department has to be involved. So lots of people's time is bound, because obviously if you've got like a 16, 17-year-old running around your company, you have to supervise them all the time. You can't let them in on their own. They have to, especially in Germany, there's the Jugendarbeitsschutzgesetz, which says how long they're allowed to work, how they're not allowed to be in there before you, stuff like that. You have to find work for them. You have to prepare all of that. Maybe people talk to them. So there's a lot of sort of like upfront cost that you have to think about. That's something to keep in mind. Then, of course, you have to find them. Well, you could use a hiring pipeline. You could go like, we're going out to market and we want to hire an intern, and then hundreds of people apply. So that might not be a great idea, unless, of course, you're like one of the really big banks. I think we're in Frankfurt. You know, I think there are 1 or 2 people who work at big banks. Maybe you work at something else really big and you have lots of graduate roles. And, you know, actually the product we make can help you with this. If you want to talk to me about buying our product, that's great. But typically you wouldn't do a hiring pipeline. Instead, your neighbor says, oh, hey, my son needs to go do the school internship. Or one of your friends says, hey, like I've got a mate who is looking for this. It's like my friend's little brother. Or, you know, the cafe down the road where you go and buy your sandwich, they say, you know, my son really wants to learn more about programming. Can you help? And then your instinct is to go, no, God, no, that's going to go wrong. And we'll speak about that on the next slide. But that's a really good way of finding these people. Whether that's ethically good or not, we can leave in the discussion. Yeah, like you don't really have to try hard to find them. I think this is not something you should be doing just because you can. You shouldn't be offering this just because you can, because there's quite a lot of money involved in setting it up. But if you get the chance to try someone out who seems to be good, go for it, do it. It's good. It's a good thing to do. So use it. Now, sponsor. As I said, the cafe down the road says, hey, my son really wants to try out being a developer. Right, so why should you do this? If you get approached by someone that you know and they say, my child wants to be a developer, can you help? It's great for your personal connections, you know, it builds relationships with your friends. We'll keep that one in mind. You can help those people integrate into the workplace. That's great, right? Like young people are great. We want them to do well. We can help them integrate into the workplace. You can maybe become a mentor. Maybe you've always thought about that, but you didn't know how to approach it. So this is a good way of practicing that as well. However, there are often blurred boundaries. So you may or may not know this person already. You know, if it's like your friend's son, your neighbor's son, you maybe know them. Then you have to be a bit careful. Are you like just like the cool uncle or the cool mate at the moment? Suddenly you're the boss, or the boss's boss, or whatever. And that's tricky. So for you to maintain that and for them to maintain that is tricky. It creates pressure to perform. And we can look at this from both perspectives. To me, there's always this thing about like, I always worried back when I was like 20 or something and the neighbors approached me. Should I really do this? I know nothing about this child. I know nothing if this young person is going to be good at it. I don't know whether they're going to be conscientious. Are they even going to show up? Are they going to behave? What if they don't? What if they're rubbish? Is that going to reflect on me? Are they like, are my colleagues going to think less of me because I've brought in a knob? Sorry, an idiot. I don't know. So like there's worry there, and that's the pressure to perform. You have to weigh this up. What I didn't know when I was 20 was that you could have an actual hiring process where you ask them good questions and then decide whether you hire them or not, because I didn't go through that. So if you do that properly, you can obviously filter this out, and then it might not be so much pressure on you. But it's always there. You always worry, like, what if that goes wrong? Nepotism is a big problem. So nepotism is Vetternwirtschaft in German. That's when you just hire all of your friends or all of your brothers or cousins or whatever. This can be a problem because other people in your company might see it and they might think it is unfair, or the government might audit you because they're your customer, and then they might think that's not right and you shouldn't have done that. So you have to be careful about this. And then, of course, the other negative thing is relationships may suffer because just as much as it's nice if you get your friend's child to come in and get a bit of work experience, if they do really badly, how do you deal with that? Do you tell them? Do you tell them off? How do you explain to your neighbor that their son is a really lazy idiot who can't do anything and hasn't shown up on time any of the days?
Julien, somebody needed to tell them.
Likely somebody needed to tell them off. You're right. Yes, thank you for that. Yeah, it's tricky. It's at the end of the day, you have to make that decision for yourself. I think it's a good thing to do, but you have to keep in mind all of these points. So now let's look at the person doing the internship. So pros, of course, there is career exploration, because I can go and try things out. That's great. That's useful. I get hands-on experience in something I really want to do. Very useful as well. I can use it to enhance my CV, my resume. I can say, I did my internship at IBM. That was great. I punched in numbers into a green screen application. It was great. Yes, it has IBM on my CV now. Very proud of this. There is, of course, thank you. There's, of course, the opportunity to network. So if you're very close to finishing school or university, you can build a network up. You can make connections. That's always useful. You can find mentors as well, obviously, through that. And of course, you can secure a job for the future, right? Like if you do really well, they might come back next year and say, oh, you're done with university. Why don't you come in here, take this work contract? That'd be great. We'd be really happy to have you. So lots of positives, some negatives. So if there is a sponsor, the same thing, it may suffer. What if I do really badly? Then suddenly my neighbor doesn't talk to me anymore, or my uncle, or, that might be sad. They might tell my parents how badly I did. That's a possibility. It may be unpaid, so I might not get paid. Obviously, if I'm like 17 and they do pay me something, I would be like super happy about this. But they might not. And if this is a longer thing and not just 2 weeks, then not getting paid might not be great. Expectations may be really different to reality. This is something to keep in mind. I might think this is all like super nice. I'm going to like learn how to make video games. I'm going to play games all day long. It's not like you make, you look out the window a lot and worry about how things work and bang your head against the wall. I think software development is more like that. Software development is more like looking for solutions. How do I do the thing? So expectations are really different. And of course, it may not lead to a job. It might be that I didn't do as well, or it might be that by the time I finish, there isn't a job left, or maybe the company has gone bankrupt or whatever. So there's pros and cons. Anyway, how do I set this up? Maybe, I don't know if we're going to have time for discussion, but let's just quickly go through this. So I have to find stuff to do for these people. So for work experience, I should probably collect a bunch of small non-urgent tickets. That's how I do it. I know I've got someone coming up. So like for a month or so, I just keep all of the work back that's really trivial, really self-contained. Instead of giving it to one of my trainees to just bang out in like an hour, I keep it. I write lots of detail in it. What I also do is I always give them a tour of our product. We actually have this recorded. So almost like a training, but not the big training that takes several days, just like a small training. This is how it works. This is what it's for. So that later on they can tell their friends, oh yeah, this company makes this really cool thing. And then what I also do is I book lots of meetings with lots of different people in the company, usually in tech. So I can have like software developers, backend and front end. I can have a sysadmin, I can have a DevOps, I can have a product manager, maybe a UX person, maybe the accessibility person, everyone who does a different job. I ask them, can you spend like half an hour talking to this person? And I get them to have conversations about what their roles are like, what their jobs are like, because I want this young person to come away thinking like, right, okay, now I know what an IT team does, and now I can think about, is that something I want to do? And which one of all of these jobs is actually the thing I want to do later? And that has been working really well. Shadowing, of course, also great. So if I don't have enough other work for them to do, I can just ask my team, my like the trainees I train, just have this young person shadow you, explain what you're doing, show them what it's like to work. For an internship, it's a bit different. You find out what they already know as part of maybe the interview process, and then you prepare or ask them to prepare a self-contained project that hopefully is useful for your company, and that you can then either take and make production ready and then release, or use as the basis for something else, or decide that was a good idea, but maybe we don't use it. Really depends how it works. And also have people, of course, ready to mentor them. Legal aspects, just really briefly, I'm not a lawyer. You'll need a work contract. You might need an NDA. Maybe you don't need a work contract. It depends what kind of thing it is. So for an internship, you need one in the UK. For a work experience, you don't need one in the UK. And then you also don't need to pay them, which is great. That's if it's only 2 weeks, you do a work experience, and you make really sure never to say the word internship, because otherwise they might ask for money. In Germany, there's this insurance thing and health insurance thing, and that's really complicated. Go talk to your HR. I have no idea how that works. And then there is obviously the management structure. So you have to like set expectations really early on and do an onboarding meeting, talk to them about what is expected of them, when do they have to be here, maybe it's remote, when should they be at their computer, what are they not allowed to talk about to other people, and when do they give their computer back, all of that. Do regular check-ins for these kinds of 2 weeks things. I like to do like once in the evening before they go home. Of course, this is now all remote. I just ask them, hey, how was your day? What did you learn today? What else do you want to do? Talk to them about what they didn't like so that you can change it. Try and be really close to them in a way that you can like understand if they're having fun. And at the end, have an honest and open conversation to just find out, is this like, did they have fun? Did they do well? Can I help them more for the future? And then finally, what's going to happen after that? Well, again, set their expectations for what are we going to do next. Can I offer you a job in the future? Yes, no, maybe. It depends on whether we have one at that time. It depends on when you're going to be done. Always write them a nice reference. So this could be an Arbeitszeugnis in Germany. This could be a LinkedIn reference. It could be offering yourself up to be a reference for when they go and apply for somewhere. That's big in the UK, not so much in Germany, where some company phones you up or writes you an email and asks, has this person really worked here? Were they good or not? And then you say nice things, or you try to say bad things without them sounding bad. Yeah, offer them a job if you can, or if you can't, help them to find a job somewhere else. So lots of things you can do for them, but it's important to tell them what to expect. Don't tell them, oh yeah, you were great, we're going to hire you, and then don't. So yeah. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. I think we're not going to have very much time, although there is a break afterwards. So if you have questions, maybe we do have time for questions. But so far, thank you very much. We can do quick questions. I think we probably have time for quick questions, don't we? Let's break.
So, it's a 20 minutes break, 20 Minuten Kaffeepause, aber natürlich könnt ihr Fragen stellen.
Okay, let's do some quick questions. Dem, you were first?
Yeah, coming back to your, the title of your talk,
Yeah.
what do you think are critical factors so that some human want or strive to become developers?
Okay, so the question is,
Critical success factors that
The-
they intrinsically motivate.
the question is, based on my title, what are critical factors for someone to get them to want to be a developer? That's actually interesting. I tend to only work with people who are already intrinsically motivated. I wouldn't try to convince someone to do this if they don't want it themselves, because chances are they're going to be shit. Like, if you don't really want to do this, I'm not going to hire you because it's going to be too much work. That's my thought. And every time I go and try and help someone who wants to learn to be a developer, one of the things I do really early on, like when I volunteer for a thing called codebar.io. They do exist in Berlin as well. It's like helping underrepresented groups to get into tech. Whenever I sit down with someone there who's like really, really new and I'm doing HTML with them or something, I ask them, so why do you want to do this? And they say, oh, you know, it's really interesting. And then I set expectations and I try and explain, these are all the things you're going to have to do. I know this sounds really harsh, but you have to know this up front. It's going to take a while to get to the point where this can be a job, and it's going to be a lot of hard work. And then the job is not just making cool little things. The job involves a lot more stuff, and here are a bunch of resources for that. And I don't think I would actually try to convince anyone to do it. I'd much rather help them understand why they don't want to do it. I think that's more useful. Does that answer the question, or did I say something completely different to what you wanted to hear?
Maybe a question. If you want to give them an internship or to decline and say no, maybe do something else.
Okay, so
Or what I did very often, you're a highly motivated intern, but I recommend you another company.
okay.
You can do yourself better than our.
Right. So this was a follow-up question. How do you check whether how do you evaluate whether someone is actually right? So to that part of the question, I give them the full interview that I would do for a trainee role. There's a separate talk I've given about this. If you go to this link, you can find all of my talks, and it'll be there in English and in German on YouTube. Like a 1-hour talk about hiring process that I do specifically at this company. The other half was, so you suggested that maybe they did really well, and you would say, you're like, I think you would do really well at this other company where I know people. I think that's great. That's part of my slide here, help them find the job somewhere else. So I think that's totally a valid thing to do. Thank you for that. Ovid, you had a question as well?
Yeah, I'm curious about one thing you mentioned about the reference. So maybe it's changed. I haven't lived in the U.S. for a long time, but we actually have more lawsuits than mass shootings. And the references are a little bit tricky because if you say something bad, you're stroking yourself with liability. So quite often you can't get a reference beyond yes, these words. How's that impacting like your media?
Okay, so let me try and summarize. So Curtis said in the US, references are really tricky because people like to sue other people a lot. So if you say anything more than, yes, this person worked here, you might get in trouble. So how's that different in the UK and in Germany? So in Germany, the concept of a reference where you ask someone specifically doesn't really exist. Instead, when you finish working somewhere, you get something called an Arbeitszeugnis. It's like a work report sheet, something, which can be simple or qualified. If it's simple, it literally just says this person worked here in this role from then to then and reported to this person, and this is what our company does. The extended one talks about how you worked, and you are entitled to get one of these, and you're also entitled to get a good one. So there are little books that have the secret code in them that explains what all the different phrases mean. So if you say, this person tried their best to fulfill the role, it means they were really shit. If it says this person was very sociable and got along great with their colleagues, it means they came to work drunk. If it says always, I'm trying to translate this to English, always did their work to our highest satisfaction, that means like you were brilliant. But they're like really subtle differences. But the problem is that everyone knows this code, and the law says you're entitled to a positive thing. So it's really tricky. I don't know what the legal aspect of this is if you shit talk someone. Like you can definitely give them a bad one that sounds nice, and another company will understand that, but they don't really have to use it. They're just entitled to get it. But the other company doesn't typically, it's like, so there isn't like, you can ask for it, but you don't have to provide it. If you see what I mean? And in the UK, it's mostly companies just say, yes, this person worked here. But you also get companies call someone up, as in like they might call someone personally and ask a bunch of questions, and you try to be positive. I haven't heard of anyone being sued because of this. I personally haven't given a reference, only once in Germany for a freelance aggregation company, which was really weird. And I think that's not standard that they do that. But I think it's less likely to be sued because it's harder to sue people. Yeah.
I know you don't sue the company, but you go to a lawyer, and the lawyer asks for a better one. That's common.
Like a better, yes. So
You can ask for change.
yes. So thank you. That's follow-up is basically if you get this reference document in Germany, and you don't like it, you can go and find your a workplace lawyer, and that lawyer can then write to your former employer and say, that isn't good enough, you have to give a better one. And then typically they will give a slightly better one. So they'll remove some of the really negative bits and give you a slightly better one. So you can basically threaten to sue to get a better one, but no one ever goes to court about this usually. I've never heard of someone really doing that. Right. Any other questions, or is it time for coffee? If you have other stuff you want to talk about, in particular hiring, find me. I will be happy to discuss. Thank you very much.